Fasting before training. Are you actually burning fat or damaging your metabolism? That is the core question behind today's video. What does fasting do to your body when you train? According to science, some people believe that training on an empty stomach forces the body to burn fat faster. Others fear that doing so will trigger muscle loss, poor performance, and a slower metabolism. These two beliefs have coexisted for years, and both are only partially true. The problem is that the human body does not operate on intuition or gym myths. It operates on physiology, hormones, and compensation mechanisms. And without understanding these biological switches, it's easy to believe you're doing something healthy while actually working against your own metabolism. In today's episode of Health Metabolic Science, we move beyond the simplistic should you or shouldn't you debate. Instead, we break down what truly happens inside your body when you train in a fasted state. When does your body actually burn fat? When does it compensate and protect fat instead? When does fasting support performance and health? And when does it backfire? This video is not about extremes. It's about clarity. About understanding how your body chooses fuel, adapts to stress, and balances energy over time. If you're interested in real health science, free from shortcuts and blind beliefs, subscribe to Health Metabolic Science and stay until the end of this video. Because the real insight isn't about whether you eat before training, it's about how your body learns to use energy in the long run. The question, should you train fasted or eat beforehand to burn more fat? Sounds simple. Yet that simplicity is precisely what makes it one of the most misunderstood topics in health science. For years, the fitness world has been split into two opposing camps, each convinced they hold the absolute truth. The first camp believes that training on an empty stomach forces the body to burn fat. On the surface, the logic feels sound. No incoming food, no new sugar in the bloodstream, so the body must turn to stored fat. In this view, fasted training acts like a direct key to the fat vault, accelerating fat loss and eliminating stubborn fat more quickly. The opposing camp warns just as strongly that training fasted is biologically dangerous. They argue that exercising without eating lowers blood sugar, reduces performance, and pushes the body into panic mode where it begins breaking down muscle tissue to survive. From this perspective, fasted training not only fails to burn fat effectively, but may also slow metabolism and undermine long-term health. The problem is that both beliefs sound convincing and both miss a critical piece of biology. Human physiology rarely operates in black and white terms. The body does not respond to belief, motivation, or intention. It responds to hormonal context, energy availability, and adaptive signals. This video removes the emotional debate and replaces it with a more precise question. Instead of asking, should you or shouldn't you, we ask, what actually happens inside the body when you train in a fasted state? Not just during the workout, but across the full 2 4-hour cycle and over repeated days. Here is the key insight. Burning more fat during a workout does not automatically mean losing more body fat overall. This is where intuition often misleads us. The body is not a simple furnace where less food or more exercise guarantees fat loss. It is an intelligent system designed to restore energy balance after every intervention. When you train fasted, the body does tend to mobilize more fat in that moment. But biology does not stop when the workout ends. After exercise, the body evaluates the energy deficit and adjusts its strategy for the rest of the day. It may reduce fat burning at rest, increase hunger signals, or prioritize carbohydrate use when food becomes available, all in an effort to compensate. Conversely, when you eat before training, the body may burn less fat during the workout itself. But that does not mean fat is permanently protected. Once the meal-derived energy is used, the body continues adjusting and may burn more fat during recovery to rebalance the equation. This compensation effect explains why many long-term studies find that when total calories are equal, fat loss differences between fasted and fed training are far smaller than expected. This does not mean fasted training is useless, nor does it mean eating before training is mandatory. It simply means that exercise does not exist in a biological vacuum. Its impact depends on intensity, duration, stress levels, sleep quality, overall diet, and individual adaptability. So the real question is not whether fasted training is good or bad, but in which context, for which goal, and for which body it becomes supportive or counterproductive. Once you understand this distinction, rigid rules lose their power, and strategy replaces belief. This is where science replaces myth. And from here, we can begin to explore how the body truly chooses fuel during fasting and movement, and why no single workout ever determines the final outcome. To truly understand what happens when you train in a fasted state, we need to step away from abstract concepts and look at the body through a concrete image. The video offers a remarkably accurate analogy. The human body functions like a modern hybrid vehicle. It does not rely on a single fuel source. It has multiple fuel tanks, and more importantly, it always chooses the easiest fuel first. The first fuel tank is glycogen, the stored form of sugar in the liver and muscles. This is premium fuel. It burns quickly, converts easily into energy, and is ideal for fast, high-intensity actions like sprinting, lifting, or sudden acceleration. For the body, glycogen is like cash in your wallet. When energy is needed, using glycogen is the simplest and most efficient option. That is why whenever you eat, especially carbohydrates, the body prioritizes filling this premium tank. Not because glycogen is good or bad, but because biology always favors the path of least resistance. If you have cash on hand, you don't go to the bank, wait in line, and sign paperwork to access savings. The body follows the same logic. The second fuel tank is body fat. This is an enormous energy reserve. Even very lean individuals carry tens of thousands of calories of stored fat. In theory, fat is an ideal fuel source. The problem is not quantity, but accessibility. Fat is like heavy diesel fuel, abundant and long-lasting, but slower and harder to activate. To use fat, the body must initiate a series of complex biological processes. Hormones must align, enzymes must activate, and insulin must be low enough to unlock the vault. Compared to glycogen, this pathway requires more effort. And biology, like human behavior, tends to avoid difficulty when an easier option is available. This is the key insight many people miss. The body does not resist using fat, it simply has no reason to access it yet. As long as glycogen is available, or insulin remains high, acting as a bank guard, fat stays stored regardless of how much you move. When you train in a fed state, this hybrid vehicle runs primarily on premium fuel. You may push hard, move fast, lift heavy, but the fat engine remains mostly inactive. When you train after an overnight fast, liver glycogen is partially depleted, insulin is low, and the vehicle begins receiving signals that it's time to tap into diesel. However, it's crucial to understand that activating the diesel engine does not mean removing the gasoline engine. The body never switches fuels in absolute terms. It operates on a flexible spectrum. Even in a fasted state, muscle glycogen remains available, and glucose is still used for explosive efforts. What changes is fuel priority, not total replacement. This explains the characteristic sensation of fasted training. Steady. Light movement often feels smooth and sustainable, while sudden bursts feel difficult. Not because you're weak, but because diesel is not designed for rapid acceleration. It excels in long, steady output, not sprints. Understanding this hybrid mechanism frees us from a common misconception that forcing energy deprivation automatically maximizes fat burning. The body does not respond well to force. It responds to guidance. When biological signals are organized correctly, fat utilization increases naturally, not because the body is cornered, but because it becomes the most logical remaining option. This concept forms the foundation for the rest of the video. Improving fat-burning capacity is not about destroying glycogen as quickly as possible, but about training the body to use fat efficiently, just like teaching a hybrid vehicle to switch engines smoothly, without strain, without breakdown, and without resistance. After a night of sleep, whether you're aware of it or not, your body enters a distinctly different biological state. During 7–8 hours without food, insulin drops to low levels, and liver glycogen is partially used to keep the brain and vital organs functioning. In simple terms, when you wake up, the easy fuel tank is no longer full. This creates a critical condition. Access to stored fat becomes available. Not because fat suddenly becomes superior, but because insulin, the hormone that normally guards fat storage, is largely inactive. When insulin is low, biological signals shift, allowing fat to be released into the bloodstream as fatty acids for energy. When you choose to exercise in this state, the body must make a strategic decision. There is no incoming glucose from food. Liver glycogen is limited. To sustain movement, the body increases fat mobilization from adipose tissue to muscle. This process is known as lipid oxidation, the burning of fatty acids for energy. At this point, an important clarification is necessary. It is true that during fasted exercise, you burn more fat per minute than if you had eaten breakfast. This has been repeatedly confirmed in metabolic studies. With low insulin and limited glycogen, the proportion of energy coming from fat increases. The body is running more on diesel than on gasoline. However, biology never ends at a single time window. One of the biggest human errors is judging metabolism solely by what happens during a 30–60-minute workout. The body does not think in workouts. It thinks in longer cycles, constantly seeking balance. During fasted training, fat is not the only thing activated. Hormones like adrenaline and cortisol rise to ensure energy availability. These hormones signal fat tissue to release fatty acids, supporting alertness and steady movement at moderate intensity. The trade-off is that this state still represents a mild biological emergency. The body registers the absence of fast fuel. After exercise, it begins compensating, adjusting fuel use for the remainder of the day. If fat was heavily used during training, the body may reduce fat burning later, increase appetite, or prioritize carbohydrates when food becomes available. This is not resistance, it is energy preservation. Additionally, because fat is a slower fuel, sudden intensity spikes often feel difficult. This hitting the wall sensation reflects fuel delivery speed, not fitness level. Diesel is not designed for sprints. The key takeaway is this: fasted training is neither magic nor harmful by default. It is a specific biological tool. It increases fat use during exercise and teaches the body to function with less glucose. The real question is not whether fat is burned during the workout, but how the body responds afterward. This distinction sets the stage for understanding why burning fat during exercise does not automatically equal long-term fat loss, a concept we'll explore next. This is the most important point of the entire video and the moment where human intuition most often collides with biology. We tend to believe that if a workout burns more fat, then the final outcome over the day or week must also be greater fat loss. But metabolic science reveals the opposite. Fat burned during exercise and fat lost from the body are not the same thing. To illustrate this, the video presents a clear example. Two genetically identical twins. Same height, weight, body fat, lifestyle, and training intensity. The only difference is timing of food. Twin A eats a light meal before running. Insulin rises moderately, glycogen is available. During the run, his body primarily uses energy from the meal and stored glycogen. Fat oxidation during the workout is lower. If we only measure the 30–40 minutes of exercise, Twin A appears to lose the fat-burning contest. Twin B trains in a fasted state. Insulin is low, liver glycogen is reduced, and access to fat stores is open. During the run, his body mobilizes significantly more fat. Measured minute by minute, this looks like maximal fat burning. But biology does not end when the run stops. The body continues to observe, record, and adjust energy strategy for the rest of the day. And this is where the scientific twist appears. After the workout, Twin B's body, having relied heavily on fat, begins compensating. From a biological perspective, it just navigated a period of limited fast fuel. This is registered as a potential risk. As a result, for the remaining hours of the day, the body tends to prioritize carbohydrate use, reduce fat burning at rest, and preserve fat stores to offset earlier loss. Subtle increases in appetite may also occur. Twin A's body responds differently. Because most exercise energy came from food, stored fat remained largely untouched. Once meal-derived energy is used, the body shifts toward greater fat burning during rest to rebalance energy. This process is quiet but prolonged. When researchers observe both twins over a full 2-4-hour period, keeping total daily calories equal, the result is consistent and uncomfortable for fasted training enthusiasts. Net fat loss is nearly identical. This does not mean fasted training is useless, nor does it mean fed training is superior. It reveals something deeper. The human body is an adaptive system, not a simple calculator. It does not respond to isolated moments, but to cumulative energy balance over time. If fat is heavily used at one point, the body may conserve it later. If food energy is used first, fat may be accessed afterward. This is not resistance, it is biological stability. The scientific twist forces a new question. Instead of asking, how much fat did I burn during this workout? The better question is, how did my body adjust fat use across the entire day? And beyond that, will this strategy support sustainable fat loss over weeks and months? Understanding this difference between short-term burn and long-term adaptation is where science replaces illusion. And it's the foundation for building strategies that work with human biology, not against it. After understanding the scientific twist that burning more fat during exercise does not automatically mean losing more fat over the day, a natural question arises. If fasted training isn't a fat loss shortcut, what is its real value? Science provides a clear and grounded answer. The true benefit of fasted training lies not in rapid fat loss, but in improving metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility is the body's ability to smoothly switch between burning carbohydrates and burning fat, depending on context. A metabolically flexible body does not panic when carbohydrates are low, nor does it remain locked into constant sugar burning. It behaves like a well-trained hybrid engine, knowing when to use gasoline, when to switch to diesel, and doing so smoothly, without disruption. In modern life, many people lose this flexibility. Constant eating, chronically elevated insulin, and frequent carbohydrate intake train the body to rely almost exclusively on glucose. When glucose drops, fatigue, irritability, and weakness appear not due to lack of willpower, but because the fuel system has only learned one mode. When used correctly, fasted training acts as a training stimulus for metabolic flexibility. Exercising with low insulin and limited glycogen teaches the body to mobilize and oxidize fat more efficiently, while still preserving the ability to use glucose when necessary. This is not extreme deprivation, it is controlled adaptation. This benefit is especially valuable for endurance athletes, such as marathon runners or long-distance cyclists. In prolonged activity, glycogen is finite. Athletes who rely solely on carbohydrates eventually hit the wall. Those with better fat oxidation capacity can maintain steadier energy for longer periods, reducing dependence on constant carbohydrate fueling. For them, fasted training is not about weight loss, it's about performance durability. Fasted training is also helpful for individuals seeking to reduce carbohydrate dependence in daily life. As fat utilization improves, energy becomes more stable, meal spacing naturally increases, and urgency around food diminishes. This shift is not psychological, it is physiological. Crucially, fasted training should never be used as punishment. It is not the hungrier, the better, nor is it a daily requirement. Like all biological training tools, its value depends on dose, context, and goal. When applied wisely, fasted training builds a metabolism that is more adaptable and resilient. When misused combined with poor sleep, high stress, or excessive intensity, it can backfire. Science does not ask us to choose between fed or fasted, but to understand the tool and apply it appropriately. This represents a mature health perspective. moving away from universal rules and towards strategies aligned with individual biology and goals. In that light, fasted training is no longer a fat loss miracle, but a metabolic training method, subtle, effective, and powerful when understood. Although fasted training offers certain metabolic benefits, science is equally clear on one point. It is not safe or appropriate in every context. When applied incorrectly, wrong intensity, wrong duration, or wrong goal, fasted training can shift from an adaptive stimulus into a biological stressor, leading to muscle loss, reduced performance, and counterproductive outcomes. The primary risk highlighted is proteolysis, the breakdown of muscle protein to produce glucose. This may sound alarming, but context matters. The body prioritizes protecting the brain and central nervous system. When fast fuel is unavailable and energy demand remains high, the body seeks alternatives. One of those alternatives is converting amino acids from muscle into glucose through gluconeogenesis. Under normal conditions, moderate cardio, reasonable duration, this risk is minimal. However, when fasted training is combined with high intensity, long duration, or excessive overall stress, the risk increases significantly. At that point, fasted training stops being metabolic conditioning and becomes a survival signal. A key warning sign is consistent performance decline. Feeling dizzy, weak, experiencing rapid heart rate, or crashing mid-workout are not indicators of effective fat burning. They signal that the body cannot meet the imposed energy demand. Repeated exposure to this state teaches the body to conserve, lowering metabolism, elevating cortisol, and sacrificing lean mass. Another often overlooked risk is cumulative biological stress. Exercise itself is a positive stressor. Fasting is another mild stressor. Combined with poor sleep, psychological stress, or overtraining, total stress may exceed recovery capacity. Chronic cortisol elevation then promotes muscle breakdown and impairs recovery. For individuals aiming to build or preserve muscle, high-intensity training in a fasted state is particularly risky. Strength training relies on rapid glucose availability to sustain performance and anabolic signaling. Without fuel, workouts suffer in quality and send the wrong message: that conditions are unfavorable for muscle growth. Over time, this can lead to lean mass loss despite consistent training. Adaptation also varies widely. Beginners, individuals with blood sugar dysregulation, women in hormonally sensitive phases, or those already fatigued often respond poorly to fasted training. Instead of improved flexibility, they may experience hormonal disruption and compensatory overeating. The scientific message is not "never train fasted," but rather "do not train fasted blindly." Fasted training should be used only when intensity is appropriate, duration is controlled, sleep and recovery are adequate. The goal is not maximal strength or hypertrophy. If your goal is performance or muscle gain, eating beforehand is often the better choice. If your goal is metabolic conditioning at low to moderate intensity, fasted training can be useful when guided by bodily feedback. Ultimately, science reminds us, muscle loss is never an acceptable trade-off for fat burning. A sustainable health strategy preserves lean tissue, supports recovery, and works long-term. When fasted training violates these principles, it must be adjusted or paused. When we step back and look at the full picture, the most important takeaway from this video is not whether you should or shouldn't train fasted, but how you reframe your relationship with your body, energy, and biological adaptation. Fasting is not magic. Exercise is not punishment. And your body is not a machine that must be forced into change. It is an intelligent system that constantly observes, learns, and adapts to preserve survival. When you try to burn fat as fast as possible, the body often learns to protect fat instead. But when you create a stable biological environment, low stress, clear hormonal signals, adequate recovery, the body naturally shifts into repair and efficient fat use. Science offers a deeply healing truth. No single eating or fasting window determines your health. What matters is consistency, recovery, and how you treat your body over time. Fasted training can be a useful tool when it improves metabolic flexibility, mental clarity, and reduces sugar dependence. But it becomes harmful when used as self-punishment, when fatigue signals are ignored, or when stress and sleep deprivation are overlooked in pursuit of burning fat at all costs. Sustainable fat loss does not come from harshness, it comes from understanding. Metabolic health is not built by fighting the body, but by working with it. When muscle is preserved, energy is stable, sleep is deep, and the nervous system is calm, fat loss follows naturally, not as a battle, but as a byproduct. If you're exhausted by conflicting advice, extreme strategies, and the feeling that you're always doing something wrong, this video is for you. Health metabolic science exists not to sell shortcuts, but to help you understand the real biology behind your body, so you no longer fear eating, fasting, or training. If you value this science-based, body-respecting approach, subscribe to Health Metabolic Science. Stay until the end of this video, and in future episodes, we'll continue breaking down how insulin, stress, movement, and circadian rhythm work together to build lasting health without extremes, without self-destruction. Health is not a race. It is a process of learning to listen to and trust your own biology.